Welcome back to Taiwan On with John. Today we're going to do the second variation from the AFS Intruder Kit, and we're going to tie this fly right here. This is what it's going to look like. So stay tuned and we'll get this thing done. Thanks for tuning in. So here's a variation of our AFS Intruder. We're going to call it the Skinny Classic, and it's real similar to Scott Howell's Signature Intruder, which is a really popular fly. It's a little different, but it's probably the most similar to that fly. So we're going to get our thread on here. And the first thing we're going to do is turn this upside down and tie our lead eyes on the bottom. I like to create a little thread cradle here. So here we have our dazzle eyes, which come in the kit. We've got 10 dazzle eyes and 10 shanks and 10 stinger hooks and enough wire to make 10 flies. Okay, now we grab our Senyo intruder wire. Just a couple turns to get it to stay there, and then want enough out the back so we can get our hook on, our little stinger hook on at the end. Now I've kind of measured on my vise where that is, and it hits here on my vise, so that's, you can always make a mark on your vise about where you think it's going to be. If you put your fly on ahead of time, you're more than welcome to do that, or your hook on ahead of time. I just find I end up poking myself with the hook, so I put it on once the fly is already done. We'll add a security. I'll wrap towards the head, take each end with a wire and go around the lead eye, or dazzle eye in this case, like so. Take my wire cutters, cut those off. Run this down the hook all the way to the back. And with this intruder shank, the Senyo intruder shank, I like each side of the wire to kind of go down each side of this shank as I get down here towards the back. Okay. So our first material that's going to go in is, I'm going to do a pink version of the, we'll call it the Skinny Classic. Now on the last fly I used dubbing. You can just use the pink dubbing, but this is nice and quick. You will see a couple, 2 or 3, 4 wraps, and I'm going to twist this in for my rear station. As you can see, it only takes a couple turns. Couple good strong wraps with the big fly thread. Secure it, wire cutters, and that part's done. Now our next step, ostrich. Got about 6 ostrich hurls, and you just want to picture this going about where to the end of the stinger hook. So that's about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. So the variations that we're going to do here, we're calling it the Skinny Classic because it's going to have the least amount of materials. Okay, got that part done. Now we're going to do the body. The body is just going to be this pearlescent tinsel, which comes in your Intruder Kit. I want to make sure I do a good taper with the thread here, so when I wrap this down, it's nice and even. So I'm just going to kind of build the taper here with my heavy thread. And again, this is a part of the fly you see the least. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it just adds a little internal glow to the body of the fly. Okay, I'm going to wrap about to there. That's going to leave me space to do the front. So as I wrap this on here, I can really pull pretty hard on it. Get on there nice and tight. I always cut these a little extra long so it doesn't slip out of my hands as I'm wrapping it forward, which will happen. All right, we got that part done. Now we're back to the brush, the EP Senyo brush, which is in your kit in 3 colors. Secure that. I like to pull the fibers of the brush forward as I turn that around. I'm going to do it a little heavier up front, so we've got more material to support up here in the front. A few good tight turns, a couple turns on the other side. Wire cutters. Okay, we're getting close here. This is a good quick tie. Back to ostrich. Now we're going to put in our 6 to 8 strands. We want to overlap this rear piece. So we're just going to come right about to the back of where this rear pink brush ends, so just about that much. Get that in there, a couple turns in the back, a couple turns in the front. We've got that. Now, if you have a rotary vise, you can turn this thing upside down and do the same thing on the bottom side. Same length. I like to make sure these are even. I'd rather be a little shorter on the bottom side than on the top. Couple turns, clip it off, turn this guy back around. I'll often wet my fingers and just kind of preen this fly and get all this stuff out of the way as I go, and that also gives me kind of a picture of how it's going to turn out. Okay, now I'm going to take my crystal flash, which is in your kit. About 4 strands. I'm just going to run it right over the top. We're going to go right about out to the end there. Last step, schlop and collar. Tie in the tip. Schlopin is a real versatile material. I like it for my collars on a lot of my steelhead flies. Two turns in the back, two in the front. And our last step, we'll ice dub. Three turns. Okay, so I've finished dubbing the head. I've worked the thread around to the eye of the hook. I'm going to secure it with some half hitches, or you can whip finish if you choose. And there is what we'll call the Skinny Classic out of the AFS Intruder Kit. So here's a finished product from our second variation out of the AFS Intruder Kit, the Skinny Classic in pink and black. Stay tuned next time for the third variation, which we're going to call the Spider Monkey.